I'm your host, Locum23. You're joining me for the movie review of Gemini Man. Part 1 will contain no spoilers for those who haven't watched the movie yet, and Part 2, I will indicate which will contain spoilers. Let's go ahead and jump right into the movie. That is Philadelphia born and raised Will Smith, who continues to ride on that. Who pretty much brings us this movie, which has been long waited, and let's just go ahead and give it a quick little score because, oh boy, I can't wait for the spoiler section to go ahead and tell you what was horrific about this movie. I'm going to be generous as a Will Smith fan and give it a 5 out of 10. If I was to take my generosity away from this movie review, I would say it's 3 out of 10. You know, I want to give it a good 1.5 for Will Smith being in the movie and he at least having some actor chops. As for the other 1.5, which will be for the aging CGI and how it pretty much has set the standard for doing that kind of job now. Aside from that, this movie was just bad. It was $5 maybe bin at Walmart kind of buying if you're really a fan of Will Smith, which even as a fan I will never buy. But in my honest opinion, I think the last good movie he did was I Am Legend. I've not seen all of his movies as of late, but I've seen most of them, and yeah, at least he's got the YouTube thing going. So let's go ahead and go over to the spoiler section. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell icon. And let's go ahead and jump into the spoiler section now. So, this movie was off to an interesting start. Here you have, a sniper, which that has been done to death in movies, and he's retiring because instead of shooting the guy in the head, which apparently 4 other snipers couldn't do, which, wow, he shot the guy in the neck. For like 2 minutes of the movie, that's what's wrong. He's losing his edge. And then for the other 98% of the movie, it's, well, he got old and grew a conscience, which I could not grow attached to at all during the entirety of this movie. It was probably the weakest excuse for why he was retiring, and all of a sudden the reason why to kill him was because he grew a conscience. That's been done to death too. I feel like the writing in this movie didn't know where to go, didn't know where to begin, didn't know where to end, didn't know where to meet in the middle, didn't know how to agree. It was sad. It was depressing. The movie was, again, okay, but there were a lot of times where you were disinterested in the characters, you were disinterested in Will, you were disinterested in the whole entire movie. The action sequences were okay at best. Being the best is where a 3D CGI guy in a suit came in and beat both of Will Smith, younger and older's asses. And literally that was the best part of this. Um, Besides the aging technology, which did a fantastic job, that's literally half of the score for this. It was just very lackluster. I could not feel attached to Will Smith growing old because he didn't make it feel like he grew old. Like, you had one slip up, you still kill the guy. That's not growing old. That's just having an off day, man. And clearly, throughout the rest of the 98% of this movie, you showed how skilled you are, but they kept riding on, well, he may be 50 to 51 years old, but there's a reason why he's so badass, is because just genetically, he was born that way. And that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. That just, I don't know what audience this is appealing to for moviegoers or whatnot, but you have to be as dumb as a pet rock to buy any of this movie and to find it above okay. Again, the writing and everything was just horrifically off. I can't blame it on Will. I can't blame it. Though I do blame a couple things on Will, is just trying to attach to him. Again, it might have been the writing. It might have been Will. Trying to attach myself to him and to find sympathy for him. Trying to, after 70 odd kills, try and find sympathy for a guy. You can't really find sympathy for a guy. Especially who has just been simply cloned. And now your own government, which has been played to death, is trying to kill you, It's just been played to death. This whole entire movie and just plot and everything has been killed to death. Um, I think the last movie where anyone was semi interested was the movie with Mark in it, and what was it called, Sniper or something. That was, I think, the last movie where anyone was like, okay, this is okay, and then everyone just stopped being interested in it. Um, like every single movie that has tried to do this, and we've done the cloning thing. We've done the older person killing the younger killing the older. It has been done to death. We had Looper, we had all these other movies out there that have been done by even A-list celebrities that just have gone completely off the rails, and it just is just timey-wimey crap, or just it just is just disinteresting at this point. There's no original theories, there's no original plot, there's no original writing anymore. It's literally, if I was to take this movie, I could compare it against 6 other movies off the top of my head and show you how literally maybe there was 6 different writers that watched 6 different movies, and they came in and then they just threw everything on the table and will act go, and that was it. It was just very lackluster. Oof, that's about it. Good job to the CGI team, but aside from that, this movie was worth the $5 bin at best. That's all I can really say about this movie. I mean, I would say go watch Terminator Dark Fate more than this movie, and that movie was okay too. It shouldn't have flopped the way it did, but I think a lot of anti PC SJW people, as well as, the latter on the other side of the aisle, kind of just seared and burnt that film before we even got it out. I thought it was okay. A little bit more enjoyable than this movie, but that's for a discussion for another time. Again, this movie just we shall never look back on this movie again and know its name. I'm a Gemini. I'm a man. And this depresses me. Without further ado, I don't know what else to go with, besides here's a couple plot holes that I just really looked at and just thought this made the movie even worse. We have this elite team that you guys are spending constant time on, and they even highlight a point where younger Will is standing there with the guy who cloned him. And, he's standing there, and these are supposed to be elite team. They're so badass. They're training, all this other thing. And they go in there, and here's this 50-year-old man with barely any ammo. He's had his ass kicked at least twice now. And he just mops the floor up with them. They have all this armor on them, which at least in John Wick 3, at least they carry that home. Here's Keanu Reeves, John Wick, shooting people, and they're having to take numerous shotgun blasts with all this armor on them and the whole 9 yards. And at least John Wick 3, they carried it home, and they made it look like, okay, he's running out of bullets. Like, these people are getting back up. Like, the bullets aren't going through the armor. It's not doing much damage. Like, these people are still getting up and still fighting him. In this movie, it was one-shot, headshots, kills through all this armor, the whole 9 yards. He had no specialty bullets, no specialty guns. John Wick 3 at least had all that, and it's still they came back for more. This is where it dropped the ball horrifically. Again, this is one of the 6 movies that I said I could reference, and it was where the writers came from that made this movie. Except it was horrifically done. They thought, well, it's Will Smith, he's gonna one-shot everybody, and that's how they played it out. And they then another Will Smith, who is about the same age as the younger CGI Will Smith, comes in a suit, constantly gets pumped full of shots, keeps getting up, keeps going, and then finally, with the assistance of the third person who isn't Will Smith, kept getting, knocked down in the whole 9 yards, and finally ended up losing the fight. Whether he died was to be seen, but it just showed he kind of like gave up or lost consciousness or something, but he took a beating and kept coming. He took explosions to the face. He stood in fire numerous times and kept coming. And that, if you were to show me that at the beginning, I would have been like, okay, you've got me interested in this badass Will Smith. But then, like, you had this team which had kind of really hardcore armor. There was only really one good scene showcasing them how badass these guys were, which was the machine gunner position in the Humvee and standing there with the thing and just that was the only cool part. And I'm like, oh, this might actually get interesting. And no, it took all of about 3 seconds to ruin that. And whatever happened to that guy? That's how lackluster the movie was. Is these people who had that moment of shine, and then it's like, oh, um, you had the really badass Will Smith, and that was it. That was it. Um, it just felt sloppily pieced together. It was like a puzzle that just wasn't supposed to fit together. That was forced to fit together, even with a pair of scissors. That was forced to fit together. Um, again, you had, in all honesty, about 6 different movies in this movie that just did not fit well. It didn't do the movie justice. It didn't do Will and his acting career justice. It really didn't do the movie justice at all. So I would say definitely don't see it. Um, that being said, that's about all I can say for the spoiler section. Everything else is just run on from other movies that I'm sure you can already know where I've kind of filled in the blanks. It's a non-memorable movie. It is something that in a couple days I'll completely forget about. Um, you know, shout out to the team. They wanted to record at a higher frames per second than, other conventional, or well, not even conventional, old time movies, and this is more of a conventional method of recording faster frames per second to absorb more in it. However, they went overboard on it. Typical movies and whatnot recorded at about 30 frames per second. They went and they did 4 times that. And then they had select screenings for that, which a lot of people were like, I mean, it's like going and taking someone who has 10 frames per second, or they're used to just everyday life, and putting them in front of a screen, and their brain isn't gonna be, I believe the word is for it, actuated. Their brain has not adapted, actuated, whatever, to that 120 frames per second. Now, when you're used to 120 frames per second, as from a gamer's perspective, who does not play on console much, when I go on console, I notice differences. Let alone when I watch something at 30 frames per second, there is a big difference when you sit and play something at 120 frames per second all the time, and then you go to half that or a quarter of that. There is a big difference. And there's also a big difference when you're used to it and you go to that. A big disorienting difference. But long story short, you know my verdict on the movie. Feel free to let me know in the comment section below what you thought, if you watched it, the whole 9 yards, or if this review was helpful at all. If you want to see more movie reviews, let me know. I have my methods, and when you're in my situation, you're just forced to. And without further ado, remember to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace.